Nhl Dfs strategy show. We've got just 4 games to talk about. Kind of weird that there's only 4. I don't remember a slate this small on a Saturday, but COVID times, that's what you get. So we actually have a huge slate tomorrow. Not exactly sure how the sites are going to break it up, but we'll go through all 4 of these games, spend a little bit of time on each of them. Cliffy joining me today. You guys know Slim Cliffy. How was your night last night?
I actually had a good night last night. Nice. Not as good as yours, but I still managed to go to 7X over on DK. Finished top 5 in the 20 max. Thank you, Pavelski and Radulov. So good night. Been a good season so far. Can't complain. I heard you had a good night too.
Yeah, I had a good star stat. I mean, I wasn't really on them that much. I think I had like 4 or 5%, but it ended up that a couple of my best lineups needed the stars and had them in there with Khudobin. So people were talking in Slack yesterday that Josh's dog, did you see Josh's dog was on the stream?
Yeah.
He was barking and like licking his face when he was talking about Anton Khudobin. So that was the call. Josh's dog almost led me to first place. So
you
almost got there.
Bobby a little treat if you ever see him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, got to stock up on some treats there. Let's see, what else do we have from last night? I mean, yeah, Stars just dominated. It was a 6 or 7-0 victory shutout. Like, you just had to have the Stars if you were going to compete in anything. Did you have any of them in your 20? Or did you play 20?
Oh, yeah. I had more of the Hintz Gurianov line just because they were a fair bit cheaper. And I'm pretty big on Hintz and Gurianov just in general this year. But I had some Pavelski and Radulov. And honestly, like, I wasn't on Pavelski and Radulov that much either. It's just when I ran my crunches, that's what it spit back at me. One thing I've learned to do over the last few years is to not doubt my numbers and think that I know better than what the optimizer spits back at me. So, like, when my lineups come back, like, I'll change, some one-off defensemen or one-offs and stuff like that. Maybe I'll change a stack or two, but I've learned to just leave it because I've learned to start trusting my projections more rather than just my intuition. So it led me to leaving Pavelski and Radulov in there. And, I had them with Klingberg. I had some with Heiskanen, had all of them with Khudobin, and it worked out real well. So kind of disappointed it wasn't a better night considering how much Dallas I had, because like I was in the 20 max and I had Dal 1 in 4 out of 20 lineups and Dal 2 in 2 out of 20. So I had them in, almost a third of my lineups, and I still, I didn't bank anything, wasn't top 2 or top 3 anywhere, but I'm not going to complain about a good profit night. Just,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, you basically have to get like a top 0.1% these days. Like a few years ago, and people, I don't know, it's kind of overplayed. Like, obviously you have to bank to like make profit long term if you're playing like grinding GPPs, but it's just harder now with the min cashes and the 16% rake on some of these low dollar tournaments. Like, you got to bank every once in a while and get those 0.1% lineups. So in NHL, I mean, you're going to win a little bit more often than other sports. Like, we were talking about some showdowns and stuff like that in these other sports. Like, there's a big lottery MMA tournament. We'll talk about a promo for that, promo code Connor, if you guys want to check that out. You got like NFL showdowns, NFL 2-game slate tomorrow. Like, you're just not going to bank those very often. There's way too many people. Someone's going to hit the stone cold nuts. And in NHL, it's nice that you don't have to do that, especially on bigger slates. Tonight, there's going to be some duping going on, I think. I'm looking through my crunches, and some labs are coming back, and it's like, like 15, 20 expected dupes in a fairly large field tournament, like the $10. So those are going to be the type of lineups I avoid, but I think a pretty fun slate. I was just going through, giving a quick look through, and ran a crunch, and I think it's interesting because Winnipeg plays late, and we know that there's going to be a ton of ownership there. So potential for some late swap opportunities. You're going to know, like, you're going to have 2 games. Half the slate is going to be completely finished by the time we get to pregame skate for the Senators and the Jets, which is really nice. And then you're going to have another game that's probably going to be 2 periods in. So you're going to know where you're at if you go heavy on the Jets and whether or not you need to swap or if you're competing in a tournament. unless you just stack up Sens and Jets, which might end up being a good idea here tonight. But let's get right into this. We've got ownership projections. Everything's loaded up. Top Stack tool. Go check that out. I think FC is doing the lines manually. So I've noticed that over the last couple of days, they've been very, very accurate compared to the blip we had a couple of days ago. So, just a PSA, the site went down yesterday. If you are crunching, if you're making a bunch of lineups around lock, just be sure to, like, a couple hours before, just have a crunch ready where at least you have some reasonable lineups, or have a dummy lineup in with late players only or something like that. You just want to protect yourself. Like, obviously, we apologize for having issues. We don't actually know what caused them just yet, but we try to work for that to never happen. So just got to be prepared. Luckily it worked out for some of us last night. So let's get into it. Philadelphia and Boston. We've got a 2.6 implied total for the Flyers, 2.9 for the Bruins, Carter Hart and Yaroslav Halak. These teams have played at least once a couple of days ago. I don't know if they've played. This is part of a 3-game series, but we just saw this matchup. I believe it was a 5-4 game in overtime, maybe shootout. Boston wasn't amazing in that game. I think the second line did a decent amount of damage. Nick Ritchie, I think, had a goal, multi-point game. And then you had the JVR Giroux line was pretty solid for the Flyers in terms of just results. Pretty one-sided game in terms of possession. But what do you like here, going back to the same matchup from a couple nights ago?
Yeah, so, I mean, without Sean Couturier in the lineup, this Flyers team looks pretty punchless. And the problem with the matchup against Boston is that you're going to go into Boston, and that Hayes line is going to be neutralized immediately by Bergeron and Marchand. So, that Hayes line for me is just off the board right away, as a stack. I'm just not using them. So then you have to go down further into the Philly depth. So now you get into the second and third lines. And I actually kind of like that second line with Nolan Patrick, Konechny, and Lindblom. Konechny, he's a shooter / finisher. He's a really, really good goal scorer. He's leading their team in shots per 60 right now. So, he's the guy that you kind of look to for shot volume from the roster. Lindblom is good two-way winger. He can help distribute. So I just kind of like the chemistry of that line. And they're going to get to avoid Marchand and Bergeron. So Nolan, Konechny, and Lindblom is a line. I'm not 3-stacking them, Patrick and Lindblom. You can put them together because I believe they're on the same power play. I mean, you can one off Konechny if you want, but I think they're going to be matched up against the Boston second line. And that second line really isn't a lot to speak of. Krejci's good offensively, but he's not the defensive player he was 4 or 5 years ago. Nick Ritchie's not a great defensive player. Jack Studnicka is still a prospect, still filling out. So I think that Flyers second line can kind of do a little bit of damage, but the thing is, if you stack Lindblom, Patrick, and Provorov, they're so cheap that they basically, you only need them if you're stacking Winnipeg power play. So that's kind of the problem I'm running into with the Flyers today, is that I don't want to use the top line. I like the second line, but they're so cheap that they're really not much use unless you put them in that one stack with the super chalk Winnipeg. So I don't see myself having a lot of Philly. I might have one or two duos from that second line. Joel Farabee, he's shooting a lot at 5-on-5, not so much on the power play. He's not the focus on the power play just yet. It's more 5-on-5. So if you want to use Farabee as a one-off, I guess you can do that. But I'm just not super, super stoked about the Phillies forwards here tonight. It's basically just, that second line with Patrick and Konechny and Lindblom, mixing some two-mans in there somewhere. Provorov on the blue line is fine. He played 30 minutes last game. He's probably going to play 27 or 28 in regulation here again tonight. Those kind of minutes at, in that mid 5K range, that's fine. Carter Hart is a cheap price. So, if Boston runs them over here again tonight, you could see a lot of volume. We like volume. So that's fine. But that's just kind of the way I'm looking at this game, is that there's just not much that the need to go on the Philly side. Like I said, the top line's in a brutal matchup. The second line, I think, is in a good matchup. You don't really need the savings. If you do need the savings, then use them. Like I said, I'm probably going to use them in a Winnipeg stack somewhere, but it's not something I'm going, super heavy on. So that's kind of where I'm sitting on this one. We should mention that Matt Grzelcyk is out for Boston. Charlie McAvoy is expected to take the top power play duties. Now, McAvoy, he's a good offensive defenseman. He's a good passer. I don't know if he's like a shooter per se, but like that doesn't really matter on that power play. You're looking for assists from him. You're not looking for goals anyway necessarily. So, McAvoy, if you want to throw him in with your Boston stacks, I do like the Boston top line. We have them pretty chalky. I think we have both Marchand and Bergeron over 20% owned, so they're going to be chalky. But I think there's enough depth around, and there are enough ways to get different, even on a short 4-game slate. You can throw Nick Ritchie in with them. You can throw Krejci in with them for the double center. You can take McAvoy out because he's probably not going to be the focus of the power play. So you can put in somebody like Kevin Miller, who might play some big minutes here tonight if you want to get different. So that's kind of where I'm going here. I'm going Boston top line pretty heavily. But I'm going to mix and match. I'm going to put in guys like Ritchie and Krejci, or even Craig Smith. I should mention Craig Smith ended up on the Boston top line by the end of last game. He played their final 3 or 4 shifts or something with them. So not saying that Craig Smith is going to be on the top line, but, if this is a close game, we could see him there in the third period. So Craig Smith is actually one of my favorite one-offs on the whole slate today. So that's kind of where I'm at. Boston top line, a little bit of Philly second line, some cheap Carter Hart, and some one-off Craig Smith.
Yeah, the Smith call wasn't one I was looking for. I mean, I like the Coyle Smith duo, and I'm looking to get deep into some of these combos. So like that might be a 2-man that I get to, and some power play stacks. Like if I am playing someone like a Winnipeg power play 1 stack, I'm sure I'll mix in a couple of those. Coyle Smith might be a 2-man that I have to fill out that rest of that lineup. It's really hard for me to get excited about anything on Philadelphia, but at the same time, their ownership's just so low. I just can't, like from a matchups perspective, I don't really see anything to love. Maybe you just consider, like you just take a shot on Philadelphia 1. It's a really low probability play, but the ownership is even lower than that. Like if you look at the top stack tool, it's like, man, do I really want to play someone that's going to see a bunch of Bergeron and Marchand and guys like that? And like, even like the Corrali line, like Corrali's pretty good defensively. They might see some time against the opposing top lines. I don't know. It's just not really a ton to like on the Flyers side. So
I mean, like just to jump in for a second, like we went through this last night with Dallas, right? Like I talked about it in our Slack last night a little bit. I wasn't in love with Dallas because it was Dallas's first game. They didn't, they hadn't played all season because of COVID. They barely had any practice time together, et cetera, et cetera. But our ownerships had them all at like, I think Radulov Pavelski at like 4 or 5%, and Hitz and Gurianov somewhere like 7 to 9%. They ended up coming in lower than that, and we saw what they did. Like I don't like the spot here for Philly either. I'm probably not going to go to the top line, but I'll probably go to the second line. But again, it's one of those things. It's a 4-game slate. There are only so many spots to go, and these are still good hockey players that are going to play 15, 16, 17 minutes. I'm going to take that. Like I said, I'm not going to go to the Hayes line. I think it's a bad enough matchup that I can get away from that. But the Patrick Konechny line, I'm probably going to go there because they're going to come in at 2, 3, 4, 5% on a 4-game slate. And that, I don't care about the matchup at that point. At that point, it's all about ownership and price. I don't like, they could be going into the teeth of 2015 Anze Kopitar. I wouldn't care. It's an ownership play at that point.
Yeah, for sure. It is an ownership play on Philadelphia pretty much across the board. So I think with the ones that I have, the Philadelphia stacks that I have, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, gonna sprinkle. I know people said sprinkle was like their most hated word for DFS people, and then I just said it, so I'm trying to be aware of that. But I'm gonna sprinkle these Philadelphia lineups, and with the ones I do have, I will just try to avoid like the cookie cutter Winnipeg one. I'll play someone else. I'll leave some salary on the table. I'll go with Vancouver power play. That's a little bit lower owned. well, a lot of it lower owned than Winnipeg right now. So, yeah, it's just an ownership play in Philadelphia, not a whole lot to like. For a team that just scored 4 goals against Boston a couple nights ago, like the results, the actual like numbers, underlying numbers would suggest they should have scored a lot less than that. So McAvoy, top power play, he's your guy if you're going to really either of the top 2 lines. Don't love a whole lot on the Boston side outside of McAvoy, just your obvious play there, and then Gustafson, I like a little bit for 4,500. There's 2 of them, so just check, make sure he's updating on Fantasy Cruncher. I think they may have fixed that because I don't think I manually put him in and I got him in some of my crunches. But just make sure that he actually uploads if you do want to play some Gustafson one-offs. I think I'm going to have a fair amount of those.
One thing I'm struggling with is Halak because he's 7,600, which I find very cheap for this guy in this situation. But he last game, like you said, Philly scored 4 goals on 25 shots, 26 shots. Like they're not like Boston's not going to allow a lot of volume. I don't like is Halak going to see more than 25 shots tonight? I doubt he faces 30. So, like I'm just having a tough time like what to do with Halak because it is a good spot, it is a good price. He's gonna be fairly chalky. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, like correlating is always a possibility, but it's not a must here. I think if you're going to Boston, just because of the projected low shot volume, I'm more likely to one off an expensive goalie tonight than I would on a larger slate like Carey Price, something like that, a game that could have some high event outcomes and a guy that just might see a ton of volume and be at pretty low ownership that we're projecting right now. So Cal Peterson, someone like that. Maybe not guys that are necessarily any good, but could get you a big score if you get them on the right night. Let's go to the premier. Well, maybe the second best game on the night, not the premier game. That's the last one. Montreal, Vancouver, 3.3 implied total for the Canadiens, 3.1 for the Canucks. Is this a day game in Vancouver? I'm just realizing this is a 7 p.m. Eastern start. So, okay, because they're always late. They're West Coast. So that was messing me up a little bit there. Price and Holtby are your projected starters. Neither of them confirmed at this moment. Vancouver is just decimated. I don't think they're getting back Edler or Hammond tonight. And then Chatfield left the game. I don't know that he's any good. Chatfield left the game the last time these teams played 2 nights ago. Vancouver got trounced. Like they just couldn't really get anything going. Montreal was crushing them. Toffoli and Yoel Armia both had huge days. Kotkaniemi got in there a little bit later. Their top line didn't really do a whole lot for Montreal, and they still destroyed it in that game. And that's just because Vancouver's got really nothing going for them on the blue line outside of a couple guys. Quinn Hughes, his minutes weren't crazy high. I think he got like 21, 22 minutes in that game. Schmidt got 28, and Tyler Myers got, I think, almost 25. So I don't know, from a hockey perspective, what are you doing with this Vancouver side? Like, how big of a loss are both of these guys for them?
So I don't think it's that huge of a loss because I shouldn't say that. Vancouver relies heavily on their power play for scoring, like a lot. And they still have Quinn Hughes to use for their power play. So that they've lost other defensemen doesn't really change much for me for their offensive outlook because they only have a handful of puck movers on the blue line anyway, notably Hughes and Schmidt, and they're both in the lineup still. So as far as offense at 5-on-5 or on the power play goes, it doesn't change a lot for me. Now, defensively, of course, like this wasn't a deep defensive group to begin with, and the fact that they keep losing bodies is a huge concern. Like this was a team that was bottom third by expected goals against last year, and then lost their starting goalie, and then lost Chris Tanev and lost Tyler Toffoli. Didn't really replace any of them. I mean, they brought in Nate Schmidt, who I suppose is a fine replacement for Tanev, but I think Schmidt's a little bit. I mean, Tanev is kind of falling off defensively. But anyways, Like Vancouver's just looked terrible defensively this year, as kind of expected. If you look at the past two games, because this is the third game these two teams have played against each other this week. And before we dig in, that's kind of something I want to mention is that there were 14 power plays in the last game. And Tyler Myers took a run at Joel Armia. Like, I don't want to debate whether it's dirty or not. The fact is that he didn't get suspended for it. And Montreal is bringing Corey Perry into the lineup tonight. And I don't think that that's a mistake. I think you're going to see Corey Perry just absolutely beeline for Tyler Myers at some point. So, like, it's what's making me nervous about using Myers here tonight is that, one, his price has jumped up to like 4,400, I think. And two, like, Corey Perry is going to go after him. That's just who Corey Perry is. Like, so I'm just worried about Myers taking like a fighting major and a 10-minute misconduct, and then he's gone for a whole period or something like that. So I won't be using a lot of Tyler Myers. Vancouver, I would suggest that we don't overlook them. Like I said, they rely heavily on the power play. All their power play guys are healthy. And this is like, I assume there are going to be a fair amount of power plays in this game. So, like, this is a terrible matchup for Vancouver at 5-on-5. If they can get 4, 5, 6 power plays, I will take my chances on Pettersson and Besser and Horvat and Miller and all those guys. So I do have a handful of Vancouver power play stacks. I'm not stacking them at even strength or anything like that. It's just the power play guys are nothing for me. On the Montreal side, as I was mentioning in our premium Slack, the third line of Armia, Toffoli, and Kotkaniemi just absolutely destroyed Vancouver in those first two games. They were over 80% expected goal share, and that's bonkers. That's an NHL team playing an AHL team. That's honestly how bad that is. So, like, I'm going back to Kotkaniemi and Toffoli at least. Corey Perry's probably going to draw on that third line, but like I said, he's probably going to get thrown out at some point too. So if you want to, jump down and maybe throw an Arturi Lehkonen in there because he might get moved up at some point, I don't mind that. That's one way to get different with your chalk stacks. So I'm using quite a bit of Montreal 3, but I think I'm not alone in that. Like, I think a lot of people are going to go to that Montreal 3, Boston 1, or Montreal 3, Winnipeg 1 stack because those you can fit in, Kotkaniemi and Toffoli and Romanov with Boston 1 or something like that. So I am going to use a fair bit of Suzuki and Anderson because I suspect that Horvat is going to stay with Besser and Miller. He got put together with him last game. I suspect he'll be with them again this game, and I suspect that he'll go up against the Danault line, and that'll leave Drouin, Suzuki, and Anderson to go up against Pettersson, and it doesn't matter who's skating with them. So I'm using all three Montreal lines here tonight. Like, I think half my lineups have Montreal 1, Montreal 2, or Montreal 3. If I were to put them in order in favorite rank in terms of not only value, but what I think matchup and ownership and all that, I'd probably go Montreal 2, which is Suzuki and Josh Anderson, and then Montreal 1 with Danault, Tatar, Gallagher, and then Montreal 3, because I think Montreal 3 comes in a bit higher owned than we'd like for a third line, even on a 4-game slate.
Yeah, this is the game for me. I'm going to have almost looks like all my lineups have something from this game, whether it's a one-off with one of the defensemen for Montreal, full line stack on Montreal, not necessarily a power play stack, but like I really like the power play on the Vancouver side. I think if they score, their expectation here, it's going to be pretty likely that it comes from the power play. So some combination of Besser, Miller, Horvat, Elias Pettersson, he hasn't really gotten going at all. Does he even have a point yet this season and through 6 games?
I think he has 1 assist.
Yeah. So he's frustrated.
Yeah, 1 assist in 6 games.
Yeah, that's not great. He's obviously a much better player than that. Getting demoted, playing with Pearson and Virtanen. Not super crazy about that line as a full stack, but I like the 5-man power play stack for Vancouver. I probably would like the 5-man power play stack for Montreal if they weren't so separated. Maybe you go with the second unit. I don't know how much time they're getting. Tatar, Gallagher, Anderson, Kotkaniemi, and Romanov. I suppose you could do that. That'd be pretty contrarian on a 4-gamer. But I love the Montreal top line. I'll stack all 3 of their lines as 5-on-5. Maybe you leave off Corey Perry because, yeah, he's probably going to fight Tyler Myers. And he actually projects pretty well from us from a value perspective. So just be careful with him. Be careful with Myers. I don't know how that situation is going to play out, but he's up to 4,400 anyways on DK. So his price has come up just a little bit. I really like Schmidt as well at 4,600 as a one-off, just playing massive minutes. And then Hughes, I think Homer Cleese pointed out the other day that he's shooting a little bit more. He is shooting a little bit more. He's attempting more shots than last season, but 5,800. I feel like if he has a big game here, if he has a tournament winning game, that it's going to be because Vancouver power play brought him along for the ride. So maybe he scored a goal and I'm wrong, but 5,800, a little bit pricey. I'd rather play a bunch of other guys over him as one-offs. So I'll include him in my power play stacks, but not a whole lot outside of that. Is this the game that Toffoli stops scoring every time he touches the puck? I mean, can you play one-off? It feels like popular.
Yeah, Toffoli one-off is going to be popular. I don't see how much, like, if Vancouver goes back to the same matchups and Montreal 3 is matched up against the bottom 6 for Vancouver, I don't see how we don't see, like, maybe not a hat trick, but I don't see how that line doesn't score at least one goal. Like, they're just hemming them in every time they're out there. It's not even close. It's like, it honestly is, like, pretty unfair. Just to go back to the Montreal power play for a sec, you wondered about how they're splitting it. It's pretty much like a 55-45 split. Like Romanov is playing 247 a game and Petrie's at 312. So like there's really not a huge difference between their two power play units. And also one thing I wanted to mention is that they're not sure Paul Byron is going to play tonight. And there's something weird going on with their cap situation right now that they might not be able to bring up another forward to replace Paul Byron if he can't play. So Victor Mete, their defenseman, might actually draw into the fourth line on the left wing. Not that I'm super high on Victor Mete, but like that Vancouver bottom 6 is atrocious. And I would be shocked if anybody actually rostered him. Now, this is assuming he plays. We won't know. Coach hasn't spoken yet. They said coach is going to speak probably in about 30 minutes or so. We'll know more then. Just keep an eye out that there might be a $2,500 defenseman playing fourth line left wing for Montreal tonight.
All right. That should do it for that game. Before we move it on, today is the day of the big fight. This is your last chance to use promo code Connor, CONOR. And what that is for UFC 257, which is tonight. You get a $2.57 MMA weekly pass. This is almost expired, so take advantage now. If you guys want to get in Slack, use the MMA tools, Top Fighter tool, projections, ownership, all that good stuff. We've got Slack for MMA. We've got Slack for a bunch of other different sports that you can join if you do get any sort of pass. And if you're looking for NHL, which you might be, we don't have any promos going on, but we do have packages starting at just $3.95. Head to the promo page. I believe it's awesemo.com/promos. And you can see anything that we've got going on at the time. If you wanted to get an NHL subscription, we've got projections, ownership projections, the Top Stack tool that we reference all the time, the lineup builder that I use to go through the show. It shows you projections, ownership, and the stack total for each of the even strength lines, which is a pretty cool thing to see as well. And then, of course, Premium Slack, where you're going to find all the news, notes, anything that we see throughout the day, and more importantly, leading up to lock and through lock. All right, let's start with the Kings and the St. Louis Blues. 2.3 implied total for Los Angeles, 3.2 for St. Louis. Cal Peterson going for the Kings, $6,800. I know a few people that will be interested in that. And Jordan Binnington, $8,400. Getting a lot of ownership, and man, I can't even really deny that I'm somewhat interested in Jordan Binnington. But some of the St. Louis top line is right now more popular than like Montreal's top line, which seems a little bit crazy to me, just based on the difference in how the two play and how the two generate chances. But what are you seeing in this game? Is there anything we can go to on the Kings side here?
So yeah, I actually wanted to start with Los Angeles because, you know, we just talked. It's a 4-game slate, and there are only so many spots that we can go. So we can't just choke on the chalk all the time. Adrian Kempi was moved up alongside Kopitar and Alex Iafallo. Now, Adrian Kempi is a guy people were pretty high on when he was drafted. Like, he was supposed to be a top liner for them basically 2 or 3 years ago, and I don't want to say he hasn't panned out, but he hasn't lived up to those expectations. But just because a player hasn't lived up to expectations doesn't mean they're a bad player. I think people often conflate those two things, and it's a big mistake. Like, I think Kempi is probably like a middle six playmaker, but the fact that he's a middle six playmaker playing with Kopitar and Iafallo, probably going to play 18 minutes, gives me interest here. The fact that they're all correlated on the power play as well is kind of a boost. Now, obviously, they're going in to face Ryan O'Reilly and David Perron. That's a terrible matchup. It's just the fact for me is that you can stack the Los Angeles top line for under 15,000. You can fit him in with like the Montreal top line or a Vancouver, power play stack. You can fit him in with just basically about anything except for Winnipeg. You can even fit them in with Boston. They're going to play huge minutes, and I'm not sure. Like, something I was thinking about this morning is like, how sure are we that Jordan Binnington is a good goalie? Because if you think about it, he had one good half season, and that's when they won the cup. But then last year he was average behind a really good defensive team, and then this year he hasn't been anything special. Let's not forget, like, he was stuck behind Jake Allen in the St. Louis depth, like, organizational chart for years. Like, this wasn't a guy that was banging on the door or a super high prospect or anything like that. This is a guy that had one good half season and is probably going to parlay that into an entire career because it led to a Stanley Cup. So, like, the fact that Jordan Binnington had one good half season doesn't mean he's a good goalie. Like, it takes years for goalies to prove themselves. So, just based on the fact that, one, it's a 4-game slate. 2, there shouldn't be a lot of ownership on them. Like, we're showing 12% on Kopitar. I'm not sure it'll be that high. Like, I would be pretty surprised if Adrian Kempi is double digits tonight.
Agreed.
We have him at 10%. I think they're going to come in. He's going to come in a little bit lower than that. For me, it's kind of just like another ownership play. I'm going to have Los Angeles in 2 or 3 out of my 20 lineups, and that's about it. Like, I'm not slamming them in. I don't think it's a great leverage play or anything like that. It's just I want to make sure that I have them a little bit different in case, Binnington already gave up like 6 goals earlier this year or something like that. Like, this guy isn't impervious to anything. So I'm not super high on Los Angeles. I just want to get them in because I think they're going to come in at like, 7, 8, 9% ownership, and I want to make sure I have some of that. For me, I think this game is about St. Louis too. Schwartz and Shen and Kyrou have been playing really, really well together. They're going to go up against the second line from Los Angeles. The second line from Los Angeles, like, Athanasiou is not good defensively. Jeff Carter was good defensively years ago, but he's not anymore. And Blake Lazat's still a young player. He might be a little bit above average, but we still don't know. Like, this isn't probably going to be a good defensive line. Schwartz and Shen play the power play together, so you can stick them with Krug, or you can, if you want to be a little bit different, you put in Colton Parayko or something like that. I just really love that matchup for St. Louis too. You can fit them in with just about anything anywhere else. We don't have them as like super high owned, I don't think. So I'm just checking Schwartz. Yeah, we have Schwartz and Kempi at the same price. Like, all things equal, I'd way rather have Schwartz, even if he's $1,500 more expensive. He's twice the player that Kempi is. So, like, if St. Louis second line and Los Angeles top line are the same ownership tonight, including costs, I'd way rather have the St. Louis second line. Way rather have them. So I'm in on Schwartz, Kyrou, and Shen. I'm leaving Kyrou off a lot of them because St. Louis, they don't generate a ton of 5-on-5. They're, they do focus a little bit more on the power play. So I have Kyrou in like 1 or 2 lineups. That's about it. I know he's not a popular guy amongst the DFSers for very good reason, but Justin Falk is playing like 24 minutes a game. And that mid-range defenseman on this slate is just an absolute wasteland. Like, if you look between like 3,500 and 5,000, it's basically like Alex Romanoff, and that's about it. So if you need a mid-price defenseman, I think Justin Falk is probably the guy to go to here. If you want to get different, throwing in Colton Parayko instead of Torrey Krug is fine.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement with everything you said there. I think I'll have some LA. I mean, I would imagine they come down in ownership a little bit by the time we get to lock, especially Kempe. I don't think he's going to carry double-digit ownership. I agree with you there. But once that gets reran, that should get updated. And yeah, if St. Louis, if the ownership's going to be split on these two lines, I greatly prefer St. Louis 2. Just been really good, short sample, but at least it's a good short sample, and they're going to have the better matchup. I even like St. Louis 3, so I'm looking to be under on St. Louis 1, and then over on 2 and 3. I think the third line is a pretty reasonable play here. Sometimes the Thomas Bozak duo gets a little bit of ownership. It looks like they are one of the higher owned third lines, so they're probably going to be the second highest owned third line behind Montreal, just because Toffoli's just gone nuts 2 straight games. But yeah, they're not going to just be like a diamond in the rough at 1%. I think even on a bigger slate, I'd probably consider St. Louis 3 here. So going with the middle 6 for St. Louis. I really like them. Not a whole lot after the top line for the Kings. And I think the top line is more of just an ownership play. And if they can put up 3 goals here, maybe they can get you 2 of them. And if it's just a low scoring slate in general, they might have a path to be in the winning lineup. Yeah, Falk, I think I'm in agreement with you there. Like, he's not great to watch, certainly, but if you're going to play 24, 25 minutes, I think the lowest amount of minutes he's played so far this season is 21. 4K for a guy that he will shoot. He does have a pretty good projection at almost 8 points for 4K.
I mean, and like I said, the thing is that mid-range on DK, there's no one. Like, if you're looking over 3,500, Matt Roy, Brett Kulak, Sean Walker, Derek Forbort, Joel Edmondson, Mike Riley, Nikita Zaitsev, maybe. Like, these are the guys that are in that price range. So it's not like I love Falk. It's just like I hate everybody else.
What's up with Falk? Did he remember how to hockey? What about Dunn as a flyer as well?
I mean, I do like Dunn just because he's probably going to be the 4th highest owned defenseman on the St. Louis blue line on what should be like a reasonably chalky team. It just doesn't seem that they like Dunn very much. That's what worries me.
I feel like for the last 3 years, I don't know how long he's been around, but it feels like about as long as I've been playing NHL seriously. Like, his minutes are just never consistent. And it's not a huge deal when you're this cheap, but like, if you're going to play 13 minutes just out of nowhere some games, and then you're going to jump up to 23, he's just really tough to get a read on. So when he's low owned and cheap, then sure, I'll take some stabs at him. But yeah, I just like generally never know what to do with him. So I'm not getting to a ton of him tonight, which is fine. If he burns me, he burns me.
Yeah, it's just, once you get down under 3,500 or whatever, I think there are enough defensemen that you can play. Like, Travis Sanheim is probably going to play 25 minutes. Brandon Carlo is probably going to play over 20 minutes. Eric Gustafson's running a power play unit. Like, I think there are other options once you get down to that level. Yeah,
we're showing a bunch of ownership on Torrey Krug as well. I'm not in on that in terms of like, I'll take, there's probably like 8 or 10 guys I would take at the very least as one-offs over Krug tonight. So it's going to be a lineup construction thing with him. I may just make a hard rule that I don't play Krug unless I play a St. Louis stack.
Yeah, I don't have any one-offs of Torrey Krug here tonight.
Especially if he's going to be one of the highest owned defensemen, which it looks like he might. Like, this is your clear optimizer play. Not saying you can't play him, but just maybe don't include him as a one-off very often for 5,600, a guy that hasn't been shooting much at all.
I mean, Colton Parayko, we have Colton Parayko's ownership at 1/3 of Torrey Krug's ownership. Like, there's your immediate swap if you want to get different on a short slate.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before we move it on, let's see. We got over 200 people on a Saturday. Man, that's pretty good. If you guys could hit the like button, that helps us out a ton. Helps us build the channel. We've got NBA coming on later tonight, so stick around. Subscribe to the channel. You'll know when we go live for this show, for MMA shows, for NBA, PGA, NFL tomorrow. We'll have, I believe, a 2 or 3 hour live before lock for you guys. So you never get cheated. Free content if you do subscribe to the channel. All right, last game of the night, Ottawa and Winnipeg to close out this four-gamer. 2.8 implied total for the Sens, 3.1 for the Jets. Matt Murray and Connor Hellebuyck probably going to be your starters. Maybe they'll let Murray face this Jets team again. I've got some thoughts on this game, but I want to hear yours first. Again, it is interesting because it is a late game. So how are you dealing with this one?
Okay, so I do have some thoughts on this game, and you're going to have to allow me to tell a little story here. So,
don't worry.
Okay. So I write about season-long fantasy hockey over at dobberhockey.com, and in the off-season, I wrote about the Ottawa Senators. Now, the Ottawa Senators coach is DJ Smith, and DJ Smith is notoriously known to be a great defensive coach. That's why he was hired in Toronto 5 years ago or 6 years ago or whatever it was. He got hired out of Toronto. He used to run their penalty kill, I believe. Now he's Ottawa's head coach. He's known for being a good defensive coach. Anyways, I looked at Ottawa's numbers at the end of last season. Over Ottawa's final 20 games last season, they were mid-pack in the league by expected goals against. And they had a better goals against than teams like Toronto, Carolina, the Islanders, and the Flames. Those were all playoff teams. Now, this is over the final 20 games of last year. Now, there was a lot of turnover for Ottawa. They have a lot of new players, but I would say that this roster is a vastly improved roster from the one that finished the season last year. So if you look at Ottawa's numbers this year, they're not bad. Like, you would think that everybody expected this team to be kind of like a dumpster team, and they're not. If you look at their expected goals against, it's better than teams like, I don't know, Philadelphia, Dallas. I guess Dallas has only played one game, but they're neck and neck. They're right behind teams like the Golden Knights, Pittsburgh, Nashville, Tampa Bay. Like, they're near the mid-pack by expected goals against this year, and they were mid-pack over the final 20 games last year. Like, this is now a sample of again, granted, it's a much different roster, but now we have a sample of 25 games of this team not being bad defensively. So, like, when I think about this, and then I think about the game tonight, and I see Mark Scheifele bordering on 30% ownership, like, I start to wonder just how much Winnipeg I should have here tonight. Because, like I said, I don't think Ottawa is a bad defensive team. I don't think they're anything. They are not a Chicago. They are not a Florida. They are not nearly as bad as those teams are defensively. What's giving me pause here is that there are holes that you can attack on the Ottawa roster, notably being their depth pairs. Once you get past the top pair, Shabbat and Goodbranson, there really isn't a whole lot there. Like, that third pair of Josh Brown and Braden Coburn, their expected goals for so far this year is like 33% or something like that. They're getting absolutely buried. So I actually, I get wanting to use the Winnipeg top line, but when I see so much ownership on them, it makes me concerned for a 4-game slate where there are a lot of other good places to go. Like, you know, I don't know how much better is Vancouver's matchup than I guess Vancouver's a little bit better because Montreal is a better 5-on-5 team than Ottawa, but Vancouver has a better power play. So, does that discrepancy in ownership justify the 5-on-5 matchup? Like, I don't think it does. So, I'm having a hard time getting to Winnipeg here. I do have quite a bit of Scheifele right now, but it's something that I'm struggling with because my intuition, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, my intuition's telling me Ottawa should suck defensively. But if you look at the numbers and you look at the results from the last 25 games, they don't. So, and Ville Heinola is coming out of Winnipeg's lineup. They don't have any good puck moving defensemen. Josh Morrissey's their best puck mover, and he's like a middle pair guy. So I think there are enough concerns here that if you don't want to pay up for a 25-30% Winnipeg power play, I wouldn't fault you. I still don't know. I'm going to wrestle with this probably for another couple of hours. I honestly don't know what to do with him, because I feel like, remember Josh said the other night, it feels like one of those situations where you have to just avoid them or go way overboard. He said that about the Matthews line. Like, I feel like this is another one of those situations where you're either going in with 50% Scheifele or you're just going in with 5% and hoping that you hit the right combo. I feel like you're dead in the water if you're just going with like 20 or 25% Scheifele. So that's what I'm struggling with right now.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Like if Winnipeg is the best stack tonight, you are going to have to hit every single part of the rest of your lineup. Like winning scores are going to be as high basically as they possibly can. I think in some of the higher dollar stuff, even like the 40, I think it's a 40 on DK tonight. That's the tournament I usually play, and like I think they might be like 35, 40%, especially like Kyle Connor and Wheeler on DK. So like in those tournaments, especially, there's no way I'm getting to the field on Winnipeg. And I think it's a really good late swap night because you're going to know basically like almost all the information on the rest of the slate. So if you've got a team that might be middle of the pack and you're just trying to make it cash and you've got Winnipeg 1, like you have to swap off because you just have to be perfect in order for that to hit the cash line. And so I think, like, I don't think the spot's great for Winnipeg 1. I'm like a noted Winnipeg 1 hater. Like I can't stand Scheifele. I can't stand when he scores goals. And I still play like I feel like I have to play a decent amount of them here because if I end up with 0 or like 5%, like I'm dead unless one of the first couple games goes off. Whereas if I start with 15% Winnipeg 1, I think I'm pretty comfortable with that. I could always swap off of them if those lineups suck in the first couple games. So what I'm planning to do is just, go get my 10 to 15% Winnipeg 1 locked in. Like they're not that great at 5-on-5. That's the problem I always have with them is like, man, this is a great, line. And they're really not that great at 5-on-5. They are going to be good on the power play. They're going to see a bunch of, like, if Ottawa can't stay out of the penalty box, it's going to be an early night probably. But yeah, I think it's one of those situations where people are just going to them because they're the best option, but like they're not that much better to me than Vancouver power play. They're not that much better than Montreal 1. Montreal 1 is, I think, well, maybe Boston 1, but Montreal 1 is one of the better lines on the entire slate. And they're like a third of the ownership, especially in the higher dollar stuff.
Yeah. I think this is a better matchup. Like Montreal is in a better matchup than Winnipeg is.
I agree.
Like I think people are still underrating Ottawa. Like they're not a great defensive team. This isn't Tampa Bay or Boston, but like I said, this isn't Florida or Chicago either. Yeah. Like one thing I will say is that in their last game, Winnipeg's second line absolutely throttled Ottawa's second line. And I think that's where, remember I mentioned the Brown-Coburn pairing? I think that's where that comes into play, is that third pair for Ottawa is going to play some time with that second and third line from Ottawa. And I think that's where they can get into some trouble. So I actually do have, I have like not a lot. I have a couple Stastny Ehlers, Stastny Cops, like, Cop, like a Cop Ehlers, Dylan DeMello stack is super cheap. And then you can pay up for all your guys from Boston if you want, or, pay up for, all your guys from Vancouver, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, Ottawa 1, probably the best spot. They're fully correlated on the Ottawa side, I should say, not the best spot of the night. I think Tkachuk is one of my favorite one-offs, but he's getting ownership.
Yeah. And have you looked at the Ottawa ice time? Like they're really spreading the ice time around. Connor Brown is over 19 minutes. I think they have a couple guys around 17 and everybody else is lower than that. Like Brady Tkachuk hasn't seen a big ice time increase, and that's concerning.
Do you have any problem with going to some Ottawa 2 at like no ownership with Connor Brown? Like he's the guy who like he doesn't do a whole lot, but I remember there were a couple combinations where they did a pretty good job of carrying play last season. I remember playing like some Ottawa 2. I can't remember who was on the line. Maybe it was like Tierney, Brown, and
it was Duclair.
Was it Duclair? Okay.
Yeah, I remember Duclair went nuclear early in the season.
Okay. So I don't know. I mean, basically no ownership. Like I think I'm gonna have some lineups tonight where I'm chasing, but like I'm doing okay. Like I'll just swap from Winnipeg 1 because you're dead if you have them and you don't have the nuts, and like just leave a ton of salary, go Ottawa 2 or like some sort of Ottawa power play stack with Shabbat. Like I think there's a pretty good opportunity to do that looking at some of the ownership on the Ottawa side. And it's a low probability play again, but it's one you kind of have to make if you're trying to bank one of these, or at least think about going into the late game with all this concentrated ownership on the Winnipeg side. You got to be prepared to swap off some stuff and make some really uncomfortable plays.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind playing, Tierney and Brown or something like that. Those guys are going to play 16 or 17 minutes against Winnipeg's bottom six, and Winnipeg's bottom six is just bad. So, like, Tierney and Brown, even without Duclair, put up, pretty good offensive play driving numbers. So I'm kind of with you there that if you need a cheap third line and you want to get away from the chalk like Montreal or something like that, then yeah, like a 2-man like Tierney and Brown or something, I can definitely get behind that.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've had a couple of good nights in a row, so maybe I'm just trying to talk myself off the chalk, and I should just not. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be over on Winnipeg. This ownership looks way too high. I really, really, really love that Montreal Vancouver game.
Yeah, I don't know if we mentioned it, but Dylan DeMello back for Winnipeg tonight. He should go right to the top pair, play 22, 23 minutes for min price. So if you need a stone cold min punt, Dylan DeMello.
Okay. I was going to say, I didn't see him in the projections, but I don't see it. I do see him actually. So we're good there. Yeah. One of the better values on the entire night, almost projected for 7 DK points at 2,500. That's
and Matt Murray's probably a pretty good leverage play in net.
Heck yeah. Ottawa 1 or Ottawa 2 plus Matt Murray. I'll be mixing in some of those.
Right to the promised land, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Anything else to discuss on this slate? I think there were a lot of good talking points on this one. I like these like 4 to 6 gamers. Really can dig in.
Well, yeah, and then next week it's all 14 and 12 gamers. No, not a whole lot. Honestly, just I honestly think Victor Mete might be a good play tonight, depending if he can get in. So just look for the Montreal news if you need a $2,500 punt. I think that's it. I was looking at my one-offs: Craig Smith, Dylan DeMello, Joel Farabee, Nikolai Ehlers. I really like that. Kopp and Ehlers on that Winnipeg second line. I like one-offing either one of them because I think Winnipeg's second line is going to get some good matchups here tonight.
I like the call. Yeah, I think I'm more likely to get to the field on Winnipeg 2 than Winnipeg 1 for what it's worth. So get your lineups in early, at least get a dummy lineup, something you would be okay having. You never know what could happen where DK goes down. We're going to try to not go down, obviously. But, yeah, just PSA. I always try to get something in earlier in the day. I usually do one crunch, like I'm crunching right before lock, go through my normal spiel. But other than that, thanks for joining, everybody. Hit the like button on the way out. Won't have a show tomorrow. We'll see what the prize pools are like. That's kind of going to set the tone for Sundays going forward for NHL. Use that promo code Connor. This is the last day you can use it. You're going to be watching some MMA at all tonight?
Yeah, I think I'm going to get it. I haven't been super in MMA, but I usually get the big fights, so I'll probably watch tonight. Yeah,
and before you guys yell at me, I know it's UFC. All right, it's called MMA on DraftKings, but those two are interchangeable. So, all right, thanks for joining. Notification bell, likes, you guys get the deal. We've already got 65. And thank you guys for joining. And I believe it's Josh and I on Monday. Good luck until then.
Good luck, everyone.